Hello and welcome to A Billion Ideas with me, Maria Shakil. The countdown begins for Budget 2023. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on February 1st will present the Union Budget, which will be her fifth one. The budget comes at a time when the Indian economy has started witnessing some green shoots, while the global economy is still facing uncertainty with the conflict in Ukraine and China in the grip of the COVID pandemic. The butterfly effect of these international factors, which maintains a sense of volatility as well. But like in 2008, the Indian economy has shown it contains the shock absorbers by maintaining its fundamentals. But the impact of rising prices, interest rates, limited access to credit amidst a mission to introduce efficiency via digitization remains a challenge. Various sectors are expecting the government to present the budget to push GDP growth, including sector-specific and consumer-specific incentives. Let's get you an overview of the expectations. Firstly, it is, of course, the inflation. Consumers are seeking decisive measures to control rising prices. The concerns are, of course, that fear is actually continuing over job layoffs, and salaried class is expecting some kind of relief. Rising health costs and inflation impacting household incomes. Their concerns certainly about consumers are seeking rebate hike on medical, health insurance. Then there is the credit sector, where there is a rising demand to expand access to credit in the rural sector. Rural India, remember, had received only 9% of banking credit. And if we look at the agriculture sector specifically, the government aims to double the farmer income via the Food Producer Organization scheme. The government is aiming to set up 10,000 FPOs to boost farmer welfare. But market linkages and digital streamlining remain a challenge. Moreover, agro-based MSMEs seek sustainability via efficient credit scheme. Then there is the digital education with remote and hybrid learning emerging in the education landscape. Industry is seeking investment boost and favorable regulations as well. Take a look at the real estate sector now. The sector remains a favorable investment opportunity. Rising interest rates have not really dampened the spirit of home buyers, but the home buyers certainly are seeking some kind of exemptions to really offset inflation and recession fears. And amidst this environment, the tax relief is something that the salaried class, you and me, are looking for. What are the reasons here? Remember, there has been no change whatsoever in basic exemption limit in 7 long years. The pay cuts and layoffs which was triggered by pandemic, is continuing. There is rising inflation due to global parameters and also limited avenues in terms of tax saving. Another reason that taxpayers are expecting some kind of relief is that it would lead to increased purchasing power. So the question is, are we set to see a budget that will seek to deliver the required relief and impetus to growth? Joining me now, Arindam Guha is partner and leader of government and public services at Deloitte India. Hemant Jain, Vice President, PhD, Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We have Vijay Saddana, agriculture economist, and Dr. G.S.K. Velu, who is the member FICCI, Chairman and Managing Director at Trivitron Healthcare Group Companies. Arindam Guha, beginning with you. Multiple surveys indicate that rising prices have put major pressure on household budgets. Should relief via the tax code be the top priority of this government?
Well, I think, in terms of the tax code, the alternate scheme of taxation which was put forth, it has not picked up that much. So maybe that could be a focus area for government to push through. And as all of us know, it's based on zero exemptions and a lower tax rate. So that could be one option. But in terms of rejuvenating the economy, I think more than personal taxation, I think government needs to continue its focus on capex spending, because that has really stood India in good stead. And not only will it help reduce logistics costs, but it also has a key role to play in attracting foreign direct investment and private investment, even domestic private investment into various sectors. So I think, according to me, more than the direct tax code, the capex in the budget needs to continue as in the last 2-3 years.
Okay, and come in on this, Vijay Sardana, because we are looking at the push that has come on the agriculture sector in the past, but there are also concerns as well. Agri-tech, it almost seems to be the buzzword. Doubling farmer income has been a major challenge before this government. And in the absence of farmer reforms, which were defeated, what can the government really do to expand market linkages and boost digitization in this sector? Are agro MSMEs now the way forward?
Good evening to all of you. See, there are a couple of challenges in agriculture which we have to look at. One of the most important challenges is climate change and its impact. We have seen the impact on wheat. Wheat prices have gone up because of impact on climate change on the supply side. Similarly, water shortage. All those things are one side putting pressure on the ecosystem, which is impacting quality and productivity both. When it comes to AgTech, which is your focus area,
yes,
it is basically supply chain efficiencies. Now, there are two aspects here. If you are trying to improve the supply chain efficiency, it cannot happen unless you bring the reforms which we are talking about, free farm laws, on which there was a whole protest going on for almost 13 months. That was one of the big major reform required for improving the farmer's income, for simple reason that consumer spending is not reaching the farmer. All is grabbed by the middleman cartels on the way. So how to deliver consumer spending's maximum share to farmers? This needs both policy reforms and technological interventions. Third area which is extremely important is innovations and value addition. Most of the agro commodities are still basic staple diets. We are just trying to connect one end of supply chain with the next point. This is not going to bring too much reforms, except when we are saying initial early harvest or low-hanging fruits. What AgTechs are doing is basically low-hanging fruits. They are not going to have a lasting impact. There will be a whole lot of competition among themselves, and that is going to improve upon.
Okay.
What is important here is we have to strengthen FPOs and cooperatives. AgTech should reach the FPOs and cooperatives so that earning of farmers should improve, because only then maximum consumer spending will reach the farmer.
Okay.
AgTechs are going to be sophisticated middlemen.
Okay.
Those who are doing auctioning in mandis, AgTech will do auctioning via digital platforms.
Okay. Then in that
case, will it improve farmer income? That we have to look at.
Okay. Hemant Jain, union budgets which are presented around election years are usually populist and also on expected lines, one would say, but from an administration that has deftly handled the COVID crisis and insulated the country from the global slowdown and is poised to sustain its 7% growth, there are higher expectations from the budget 2023. What do you think will be the big talking point on 1st of February?
Good evening, ma'am. I think India is the only bright spot in the whole global ecosystem. I think the budget should focus on revitalizing the private investments, consumption, and employment creation. This is I think if we are able to give confidence to the industry people by decriminalization of lot of laws at the business, and we can also do maybe increase the threshold limit of tax rebate from 2 lakhs to about 5 lakhs. This will bring money in the middle segment's hand. So basically what we are looking at is that we need to make business easier and simpler, give a feel-good factor by decriminalizing the businesses, put more money in the hands of the middle class by increasing some tax rebates, which you have said, which is due for last many years, and then focus on agriculture, on infrastructure, in the cold chain, on the cleaner energy, where India has definitely an edge on. If we can get the cold chain supply systems in the agriculture and the food processing incentivized, so I think this will definitely increase the employment also.
Okay.
So I think people are very positive about the budget as we speak.
Okay, Dr. Velu, infrastructure development.
Even in the
yes, capital expenditure and making India a manufacturing hub has been the core of the budget which was presented last year. Is that the path you're expecting Centre to continue on while focusing on fiscal consolidation, and particularly in the healthcare sector, which has delivered, many would say, in multiple ways during the entire COVID pandemic? Are you expecting some big budget announcements?
Good evening. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, absolutely. Healthcare, first of all, I think our government has done phenomenally well during COVID. You see now what's happening in China. Compared to that, I think we have done very well, even with very limited infrastructure and the supply and the spending. If you look at, say, even China, for example, spent 6.5% of GDP on healthcare. But we just spent even less than 2% of GDP, but still a combination of private healthcare, public healthcare, NGOs all together delivered during COVID. So it's time for us not looking for fluke or, just expecting when there is a pandemic comes, we'll all do some heroism. It's time for us to start slowly increasing the healthcare spend so that we come to the world average. When we want to be a developed economy, our overall healthcare spend should go up. And that requires a combination of spending in both, public sector, private sector, and also by NGOs. So there's so many things which we are expecting. Particularly the overall spending should go up. Then the public infrastructure should go up. And most importantly, the digital infrastructure. If you want to really deliver healthcare for 1.3 plus billion people across the country, I think our digital infrastructure, the digital health mission, I think government is doing all the right steps. But what we expect is we need to increase the speed rather than waiting for next 10, 20 years to reach our goals. I think we need to keep the momentum on and probably increase the spending is the first to start with. Then there are some long-term requirements from the healthcare industry to actually announce the healthcare industry as an infrastructure industry so that we can, the healthcare industry, particularly hospitals in the rural areas, can come up with better bank financing and better funding.
Dr. the one thought certainly is that our spending on healthcare is very less in comparison to most developed nations. Is
Absolutely.
that a matter of concern? And particularly what we have seen, yes, the healthcare systems in metropolitan cities may have performed, but as far as public health system in the country is concerned, that certainly is appalling. And if you move to the villages and all, they have again that those loopholes were very glaring during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, I'm absolutely right. And particularly, but what you have to see is the real focus in healthcare from health careless has come only in the past 5-6 years. Before that, I don't think we did much. Okay. So now I think every year government is spending more, but our request to the government always has been at least go to that 2.5% what finance minister has said sooner than later. At least spending 2.5 and then moving to a health, a developed economy like 3-4% of spending. Then there is, and ultimately every human being, every citizen in India should have right to health. So that means all of them should be covered in insurance in some form or other. Whether the corporates covers it, government covers it, or nobody should be looking at the out-of-pocket expenditures in healthcare. I think that's the time we can call ourselves as a developed economy. So we are a long way to go.
That is essentially a long-term plan because we are looking at budget 2023. There will be a concern, and particularly in the post-pandemic world. Hemant Jain, job creation and layoffs are a matter of huge concern, particularly among the salaried class. How can the government really stabilize those fears?
I think by and large, I think the concern is more at the MSME sector. In the MSME sector, if you look at, if government needs to give it a priority sector lending, because this is a sector which requires right now fund capital, because all the large corporates are Chrysler Plus rated, or they have the bank support anyways. So if government really needs to make MSME sectors or the smaller sector businesses into priority lending so that they have capital in hand, and once, because a lot of these businesses are closing because of lack of capital, because of in the pandemic they lost their businesses, so there needs to be a support on, especially on the MSME sectors. This is what I feel. And even on the education, I think government has brought a new policy in which they are getting in the larger education institutions here. So if they can fast track that, because today all basically the brain drain is happening in India, from India to US or to other developed countries. If we can stop that and we can save the foreign exchange and the brain drain, I think there is nothing which can stop India going forward.
Yes, and India has demonstrated its strength of being one of the largest exporters of IT and BPO services globally, Arindam. As one of the largest exporters of IT, and India has, in 2021, 2022, it was around $157 billion. And in comparison to US, which stood at $106 billion of IT services. Direct employment in the IT and BPO segment is estimated at 5.1 million in financial year, which was that. And there has been an indirect job creation estimated at around 12 million. Is that the area where there is a lot of anticipation that is coming in the budget? Because, startup areas and IT sector continues to be the going forward sectors.
Yeah, I think, the services sector in terms of exports and employment has always done well. Now we see a new trend which is emerging today. Thanks to the digital platforms which have been developed by India, whether it's Aadhaar, the UID platform, whether it's the JAM Trinity, we see a lot of action happening around many of the neighboring and other developing countries, trying to adopt these platforms in their respective countries. Now, as a consequence of that, what is happening is many of the IT services companies, including startups in particular, they are working hand in hand with the government of India as these platforms get customized and adopted for rollout in other countries which may not have such platforms. So I think that's an emerging area which is coming in, which is a positive fallout of the digitalization which has happened in India and the onset of open platforms which we see in almost every sector today.
Okay. Then Vijay Sardana, because global corporations are leveraging Indian technology talent through their capability centers in India, which are roughly employing 5 million people, it is being seen that India is well positioned to leverage this success and cater to more skill-intensive and increasingly digitized services. Again, in this space, you're looking at agri-tech. Is it a developing sector, or is this, what is the journey that it has traveled in the last few years?
See, there are many applications of technology, and we have seen in various sectors, and there was a remarkable improvement because of technological interventions. Most of the ag tech, unfortunately, are talking about apps and connecting buyer-seller. There is a huge space required to bring ag tech into seed innovations. There is a requirement to have a proper monitoring of disease control. There is a need to have a agrochemicals dosage requirement. Today we are talking about nanotechnology in agriculture. We are talking about drone application and data surveillance in agriculture. One of the most knowledge intensive activity in any economy is agriculture. We have to appreciate that. But what we have done to agriculture is we have made it an activity for illiterates. And that is the tragedy for the whole country. That is why neither there is a value addition happening, nor even talent is coming to agriculture, which is a fundamental of any economy. Seed management, seed development is one of the most complicated technological activities.
Right.
Behavior of insects and accordingly designing a molecule to control them is one of the most complicated, like a pharmaceutical activity. Similarly, when it comes to post-harvest management, Similarly, when it comes to weather forecasting. So what we are saying is n number of applications are required where technology intensity is required in agriculture. But what we are doing is we are simply doing price forecasting. कौन किससे खरीदेगा, कब बेचेगा, किस रेट पे बेचेगा. हम दुकानदार की बात कर रहे हैं. What we are doing is in the name of AgTech, we are only making shops automation, nothing else. This is unfortunately. So we have to change the mindset. We have to change the policies. The problem is that state governments are still willing to operate in 18th century with an eye on 21st century. This will not happen.
No, but so why blame the state governments?
Because agriculture is a state subject and they don't want reforms.
Okay. And we saw what happened during, the kind of opposition that we had seen to the bills as well. Hemant Jain, what does the budget need to do to maintain the momentum of startups in India? And particularly the ed-tech sector, which is primarily eyeing greater opportunities for investments and also some regulations which should be flexible in nature.
I think the government has done enough for the ed-tech sector, but I think going forward, if they give them the right infrastructure, to develop, I think India has the best potential because we have the largest population in the world. I think we have the best possibilities of growth in this segment, and I believe if government can incentivize this sector by giving some tax rebates, I think that should hold them good.
Okay, the final words to you, Dr. Velu. When we look at various sectors, there are a lot of expectations, I'm sure, because the finance minister and the government had held consultations with multiple stakeholders across sectors. The concerns that they have shared with the government could be addressed on some lines. But we are looking at a budget which is the last full budget before 2024. The centre is expected to continue on fiscal consolidation, as we have been saying. Then how do you ensure growth sentiments?
I think if you see the budget in the past 4 years, I think government has been bold in whatever they had to do, they did. I'm sure they'll continue to focus on fiscal consolidation. Though it is an election year, maybe this is the last budget before the election, there may be some populist measures. But I think overall, I think government has been very focused on the fiscal discipline, which is over the past 4 budgets we have seen. Whatever the finance minister said, she kept going on to the same direction. So we do hope they do on the same direction so that we are really one, as everybody said here, I think we are one of the best performing economies in the world today. So I think why? Because of our fiscal discipline improving year by year. So I think we would like to see the similar kind of an approach by the finance minister. I'm sure that would happen too. Because I think the government is thinking long-term, independent of just looking at some short-term fix and short-term solutions.
Thank you so much for your time. Arindam Gua, Hemant Jain, Vijay Sadhana and Dr. Velu. Of course, the Union Budget will be presented on 1st of February by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. All eyes will be on what the budget has for multiple sectors. And will the taxpayers, will the middle class get some additional relief? A story that we'll track very closely right from 7 a.m. that day. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be seeing you next week.